When I started my company in Delhi, one of the first project that I did was for a client who wanted to create a website for doing something interesting. And I was quite excited about that project because when you start a company, you want to basically do something for others, and of course, you can earn money. That is always your number one goal because you have to pay your bills, you have to pay salaries. And after starting my company, I got this project, and it was really interesting because I learned a lot. And today, I want to share something with all of you guys about my learnings. Now, when I started discussing about the requirements, the client was, of course, very excited about this project. He gave me all the details. He mentioned that, I want this site to have these features, and the site should be able to do this and that. And of course, we agreed on what needs to be done. And based on those requirements, I made a nice proposal. I like making proposals in the beginning because it gives you an opportunity to first understand what client is looking for, but at the same time, when you give this proposal to your clients, they can also see that you have understood the requirements. Now, client was happy with my proposal. We agreed on the cost, which is not really the best thing to do in the beginning. So basically, what I did, I basically agreed that, pay me this amount of money and I'll deliver these features. And that is basically the fixed cost way of working. Now, when I started working on the project, I was getting continuous feedback from the client. Client was, of course, telling me that, the site is looking good so far. And finally, before the go live of the site, I showed the site to, of course, the client, and client was happy. In fact, very happy with whatever I did, and we made the site live. Now, so far, client didn't really pay me anything, and of course, that is also one of the mistakes which I did. I'll probably come to the payment part at the very end. So the site was live, and client was happy. In the beginning, it was, of course, my very first, or rather one of my first project, and I thought, okay, I think let us do the work first, focus on the work. And in the beginning, when you start your own company, you start getting projects. That is more important than getting paid. But of course, you always have this somewhere in your mind that you have to get paid about. You have to basically get paid, and you have to basically uh, make sure that after the go live, you need to ask the client to, of course, make the payment. Now, when the site was live, I was again in touch with the client, but just after a few days of going live, client asked me to do few more changes to the site, which I did. I mean, that is fine. I mean, you can add few more things, or maybe you can do few changes. Uh, but client kept on coming back to me with more changes. And in fact, he was asking me to add more features that we never really agreed on earlier. So then I reached a point where it was getting a bit frustrating for me to accept those new changes or accept those new features that he was asking me to add in the site. And by the way, so far he didn't pay me even a single rupee, and I was, of course, not very happy about it. So one day, I, of course, asked him very clearly because I didn't really respond to all of his changes, and I was not very responsive. And he, I believe, somehow sensed that I'm not really happy about the way I'm responding to his questions. And he was actually complaining that, Ravi, why are you not responding to my emails? Why are you not picking my phones? And I told him that, I'm busy with other projects, and you're not really even paying me for the work which I have already delivered. Mind you, you agreed on those features, you agreed on those things that you have now live on your website. So he got more upset and he started, of course, behaving really badly. And that was the point when I realized that I should probably break the deal. I'll probably not worry about the payment and I'll tell him you can find maybe a different vendor and we can just part our ways. But then he realized that he needs me and he actually made the payment and we settled on, of course, the features or changes that he wanted me to do. Now, why I'm telling you about all these things, I'm not saying that it was entirely my client's mistake. It was also my mistake because number one, I agreed to do this particular project on fixed cost basis. That was the number one problem. But apart from working on a fixed cost basis, you can agree on the number of features or whatever things you're going to deliver, and you can maybe agree on a fixed cost with some, of course, margin. But I kept on saying yes to his new changes or requirements that he wanted to basically add uh, to the project. So that was number two. Number three, I didn't really ask him for the money in the beginning. So whenever you are working with a client, you should, of course, make a proposal. You should agree on things, or rather, you should agree on the scope of the work, and also get some payment in the beginning. I mean, don't really start with zero money in your account or from the client. You should get some signed agreement, which is also called as in financial terms purchase order. So when you have a signed purchase order from the client, the client is supposed to pay you. It is a legal document because he or she or any company has signed on that document that they will pay you. But I always prefer that get some payment first before starting the work. So you can maybe tell your client that you will start the work when you receive it. Let us say 20%, 50% of the payment. It really depends on how big your project is. So once you get the payment, you can start the work. And it is okay to have small changes, but define the scope. That is really important. So if you have your scope defined, let us say you are trying to build an e-commerce website with features like standard features like order management or shipping or shopping catalog, then stick to those features or rather the scope. But if the client is asking you to also make maybe an integration with some other third party tool, then that is definitely beyond the scope. So define the scope, but it is okay to always involve your client in the different small deliveries and always keep your client up to date with whatever things are happening. So when you make a proposal, when you start working, before starting the work, give your client some kind of a timeline that on this particular date you will deliver this feature, on this particular date you will deliver this feature, and it actually reflects your professionalism, your commitment to confidently say that okay, I know how this works. I have done this particular piece of work before many times, and if you want me to work on this particular project, I am able to commit to these timelines. And when you commit to these timelines, it also puts some kind of pressure on the client because let us say you need some information from the client. And if you don't get that information on time, you can tell your client that if you don't help me or if you don't give me this information by this particular date, then it can affect the future deliveries of the project. So when you're working with a client in any kind of engagement, I would say it need not to be a Drupal website or any website. It can be any software based delivery. Always involve your client, make them as part of your team member. They may be your clients, they may be your I mean managers, but treat them as if that they are part of your team and always involve them. And that brings me to the most important part, and that is choose your client. So let us say you receive a new inquiry from someone. It could be a client, individual, or maybe some company. So tell them upfront that this is how you work. I will make you a proposal based on, of course, the requirements, and I will maybe give you a timeline. Then this is how I work. I will have this much daily rates, and overall, it is okay to give some estimate, but don't really tell your client that it will take only 20 days or only 30 days or maybe only 50 days. It can go beyond because the requirements can change, and it will also make your client a bit comfortable. But in the beginning, when someone is giving you money, when someone is giving you uh, some uh, some commitment of their money, they need to know how long it will take. So give them some estimates, but at the same time tell them that it may go beyond that particular length, and try to convince them that you will not work on fixed cost basis. You will work on uh, time account where you will charge for the number of days you're working for that particular client. And if you think in the beginning the client is not really comfortable with all these things, maybe client is not really comfortable signing the proposal or giving you a commitment on the purchase order, or he or she is not happy with giving you the advance, then I don't think you should spend more time with the client, because it is not only the client choosing you, it is also it is also you choosing the client. And that is all I wanted to share in this video, because I thought if you're trying to start your own company, if you are maybe a freelancer or maybe you're a contractor and you are thinking whether you should be working for a client, doing some kind of engagement. So make sure you work with them properly. You have all the paperwork in place, and these things will take you quite far in your career if you follow these standard practices. And it is not really relevant to just big companies. Even if you're a freelancer, even if you have a very small company, you should, in my opinion, engage with your clients properly with all the legal and proper formal paperwork. So I hope you found this video useful and you learned something new today. Thank you very much.